Hey everybody, welcome to Exploring the Wine Glass, sponsored by Dracaena Wines. I'm your host Lori, a UC Davis winemaking and WSET Level 2 graduate, and today on Allure of the Poor, I am sitting down with Steve Burch of Acheson Wine from Sacramento. So sit back, grab a glass of your favorite wine, and enjoy. And remember, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast so others can find us. So hey Steve, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I am good. I am good. So we actually got connected thanks to Lee of Whining Hour Chat. So I guess was last week or 2 Tuesdays ago, I guess that was. Time flies.
They've all run
harvest.
together for me. I don't remember.
Time flies during harvest. And you know, I popped in and I just thought your story was pretty cool. So I reached out to you and you agreed to come on.
Yes.
So thank you very much.
Of course, my pleasure.
So the very first question is Acheson.
Yes.
First of all, you're in Sacramento, but where does that name come from?
So my business partner and I, Brian Scott, we started the brand. We actually started talking about making a brand together, starting a wine company, probably about 5 or 6 years ago. We've been friends for 20 plus years. We started out together working in a wine-centric restaurant here in Sacramento. He's moved on to the wine sales field, so he sells in New York. He works for a large wine company from out here on the West Coast, and he's the East Coast, Northeast regional sales manager. But 5 years ago, we were just talking about, well, what could we do? What could we start? What could we? And Brian being in sales, he had been at a client's restaurant and he did not get the placement. He didn't make the sale. But he said, so what are you looking for? What can I sell you? And they said, well, you should do a Cabernet. You know, buy the glass, and we want this kind of price range. So he called me and said, well, what do you think? Where can I find this? What can I do? And I said, well, how about if I make the wine for you? How about if we make the wine together and you sell it to him? Can you do that? Can we make it work? And of course, that was the light bulb where he said, well, yes, I can. And it kind of started from there. We were trying to think of a name, and he happened to be at his grandmother's house, and he saw this crest on the wall. And it was the Acheson family crest. Oh. And he's on the phone with me, and he says, oh, I'm at my grandma's house, and there's a crest on it that says Acheson, and that's her maiden name. I thought, there's the name, that's it. So we kind of decided at that point that that's what it would be, and we started looking into the history of it. Now, his family is fifth-generation Californian. They've been in Sacramento the whole time. He went to the same high school that his father went to and his grandfather went to, and it goes all the way back like this. So they have this really strong Sacramento heritage. And the name Acheson, they're originally from Scotland, but they were part of the royal court, and their ancestor had been sent to Ireland to govern the property owned by the King of Scotland at the time, and I don't know how far back this was. I've read some of it, but I don't remember. Anyway, so we have all this history going into the name, and we like that part of it, but there's also that Sacramento-centric part of it where his family's been there for so long. I live in Sacramento. I really like Sacramento, and I've lived here off and on the past 20 years. I lived here while I went to UC Davis, and so it was just an opportunity to start something together. Now, we were selling wine in distribution. We just sold wine through his channels in New York, and we wound up selling in London and Singapore and a little bit in LA, and that was all great. But we never made any money at it. And so a couple of years ago, I said, well, look, we have this winery license, and we have the ability to have a tasting room. Why don't we open a retail location? And, I immediately thought of Sacramento. I said, well, we should do it here. And then I had the other light bulb moment, which was, why don't we sell it all in, well, what amounts to wine growlers. Brian hates that word, but I use it all the time. But refillable 1-liter bottles, so that we reduce the waste. And that was really the big push behind starting the tasting room, is being able to sell wine and really just selling the wine. We sell the bottles separately, but they just get reused over and over and over again. So we really wanted to be environmentally responsible. We wanted to be as green and carbon neutral as is physically possible, and we wanted to sell really good wine. So that's sort of the whole story in a nutshell, but I'm sure there's more to clarify.
Voila!
Ta-da! Indeed.
Hey, so I'm going to backtrack a little bit and
Sure.
Put you on the hot seat a little to talk about yourself a bit. So you actually grew up in Ohio.
Yes.
And now, nothing against Ohio, and honestly, I've been to Cleveland multiple times.
Sure.
Because, well, we like to gamble, and there's casinos there that we've been to. But really, more importantly, there are breweries all over the place in Cleveland.
Yes.
Like, you literally can walk from one brewery to the next brewery to the next brewery. But it's not exactly wine capital of the world. No. So how did you become, being from Ohio, how did you become interested in wine?
Well, so the story actually goes back to my childhood originally. And the laws changed, and I want to say it was 1976 that allowed people to make wine at home. At least in Ohio, this loosened up, because my dad, who was a shop teacher in a high school, he and his buddies got together when the law changed and said, well, let's make wine. So they started making wine in the basement. So that was my first exposure to it. And it was kind of interesting, and I enjoyed watching them go through this process. But I tasted the wines, when I was a kid. Dad said, oh, taste this, and most of it was not drinkable.
Basement wine.
Some was really good, but it was a fascinating experience. Now, fast forward to being an adult. Now, when I got out of high school, I started working at an auto body shop, painting cars. And you're still thinking, how do you get to wine? Well, I got interested in it because I thought, well, I wanted to learn about other things, and this the thing I do for a living is not in any way what I am that focused on. I just had to do this job. So I started going to wine tasting classes and reading as many wine books as I could. And, of course, I got the Wine Spectator magazine. I would read everything about that. And at some point I decided that painting cars for a living wasn't going to be my entire future. And I was looking for something to go to school for, to go to university. Now, I started at Ohio State, and I was studying art history.
The Ohio State?
The Ohio State University. And I was studying art history, and I'm fascinated by it. I still love it. But there are not a lot of jobs in that. It's not a highly demanded field, Right. But I also realized, too, that, it's the liberal arts. And there really isn't an answer in the liberal arts. There's opinions, and people, especially in art, people argue about stuff, what it means all the time. And I'm more of an answers guy. I'm more of a numbers and science, and I really realized that about my brain sort of at this time. So I decided, well, I go into the sciences. There's an answer. Mm-hmm. So I can get my head around that. Well, I couldn't figure out what I wanted to study. But I'd been studying wine, as a hobby. And I happened to be sitting and I remember this really vividly, because I was sitting on the stool in the wine bar I used to go to on a Thursday evening in November of 1992. And I thought, well, I realized that, well, there's a school that teaches winemaking as a science out there in California. That's what I want to do. So, took a couple of years, but I moved out in 94, and I spent a year getting residency, going to community college and doing some science prereqs and stuff to get into UC Davis. But I started Davis in 95, and I've just been fascinated by the science of winemaking ever since. I still am. I still love what I do. So that's sort of how I got to this point. And of course, I've worked at wineries, and I've consulted, and I've done all kinds of other stuff in the process, and just virtually every job that you can imagine in the wine business. But this is where I've ended up, and I'm really happy about that.
That's awesome. Yeah, the science thing, I get it. I'm by trade a microbiologist. My husband is a food scientist. So the science, it calls to you, and when we're doing wine stuff, we actually have to separate, because he's like, well, is this the right numbers? And if he's hovering over me, because he's chemistry and I'm biology, the brains are different,
Yeah.
So when he hovers over me, I'm like, go away, I can't answer that question, and then he'll walk away, and then I'll do the math, the science,
Sure.
all of that stuff behind it to know what we have to do for bottling, what we have to do for blending, and all of that stuff, and then I'll come back. I said, these are my numbers, and he'll look at his paper. He'll go, these are my numbers. They're the same. And I'm like, yep. And we learned that at UC Davis. Like, do not be in the same room when you're studying, when you're taking tests, when you're doing whatever. Opposite sides of the room, or
Right.
It doesn't really matter how you get to that point, as long as our numbers always match, and
Right.
that's the important part. So you had mentioned that you worked in like all different fields of the aspects of the wine industry. So you did work in quite a few restaurants. Were you in the front or the back of it?
I was always front of the house. No, I was a relatively poor waiter and bartender. I just, it's funny. I would get so sidetracked, especially if I had customers that wanted to talk about wine. Well, I would get distracted and talk about wine, and
all the other tables would not get
forget to put orders in, and so it was all front of the house stuff.
Did you have any ability to help make wine lists up and things like that?
No. And it's funny. I'm not one to do that. I mean, not when I say I'm obsessed with the science, or at least that's my angle. That's where I am. Yeah. I'm a winemaker. Don't ask me about wine and food pairing. Don't ask me about what should go on the wine list. I don't care. That's not my thing. My thing is, these are my wines. This is what I make. This is where I'm focused on. This stuff here is what I do. I let other people do that. I don't do marketing. I've tried to do it. I'm not good at it. I'm not going to do that anymore. I have professionals that manage that other stuff.
But you know what? That's very wise, because you want to be a master of something, I forget what the saying is, but not a jack of all trades and a master of none, or something like that, right?
Right.
You know what it is. And even with us, we have very much division of labor. Mike hates the social media realm of it, and I'm the person who does like 99.999 to infinity of the sales, because you've got to talk to somebody, you've got to be in the front, you've got to be there, and he's very analytical. So if somebody tastes the wine and they're like, oh, well, we're not into that right now, that hurts, but he takes it like, what do you mean?
Right.
He takes it a little bit too much to heart. I'm sure you know that, right? If you take the wine, goes to a restaurant or whatever, and they're not interested because it's not fitting their profile, you can't really take that personally. You have to get knocked down, get back up.
And I learned that early on, and I'm sure you've had the same experience where how many events have you poured at? How many times have you poured at events? And I always tell people, especially people are just getting started. People are doing this, well, I just started my winery and I'm going to go pour at this event. I say, well, I can guarantee you two things are going to happen. One, someone is going to come up to you and tell you that you have the best wine there. And two, someone is going to come up to you and tell you your wine sucks. That happens at every single event. There's no, I've done, I don't even remember, it's a lot.
Right.
I did one a weekend, last weekend. Yeah, last weekend. And I'm doing another one. I'm actually pouring at UC Davis on Saturday.
Oh, okay. Well, we got to get on that list. We don't even hear about that one.
You should. Now, where are you located?
The winery is in Paso, but we live in Fresno. And actually, technically, right now, I'm in New Jersey.
Okay.
So I'm all over the place.
Sure.
But the winery is Paso, and we live in Fresno.
Okay.
So we're not too far from you.
I make it down that way relatively often.
Oh, well, let us know.
As a result of one of my many other jobs is I sell barrels for Radu.
Oh. All right. See, I keep telling people all the time, winemakers, man, we have other jobs.
No, I've got like 4.
4. Yep. You know, it's not a hobby. It's your job. It's just a whole other full-time job.
Yep. It's true. No, it's true. I do. I joke about this. I joke that I have at least. I probably have like 3 full-time jobs. Because I have the barrel sales job, I have Acheson wines, then I have my consulting where I make wine for Rapper E40, as well as a small operation in Sonoma, and then I have a couple other that are sort of, pop-up gigs where somebody needs help doing a formula beverage or something. I do that kind of stuff.
Do that science.
That's what I do. Yeah.
So I was going to ask you. I found out that you had gone to UC Davis. So go act.
Yes.
But you lived like an hour away while you were attending UC Davis?
No, Sacramento's only 15 minutes away.
Oh, okay. I thought you were working in Napa.
No, I worked while I was going to Davis, I worked in the foothills.
Oh, okay.
I worked up in Amador, restaurants and so forth around here. Then when I graduated, I worked in Lodi for about 9 months, and then I worked in Napa for about 3.5 years. And then went back up to the foothills, then went back to Napa.
Oh.
And, yeah, just
all right,
bounced around a bit.
That makes more sense, because I was like, oh, my God, how are you dealing with that drive?
Oh, no, listen, I drive about 55,000 miles a year now.
Oh.
For the barrel job.
Yeah.
And I had a good friend. That was in school at Davis when I was there, and he lived in Napa the whole time. And
I don't know. I'd probably blow off a lot of classes if I had that long of a drive.
Well, you have to manage it. It's really not bad if you don't have early morning classes.
Right.
If all your classes are midday, no problem.
True. You got to be smart at which class times you're picking.
Yep.
That's true. All right. So this is where I got a little confused, because you also worked at Robert Mondavi.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So that's I thought
Woodbridge. I worked at Mondavi Woodbridge.
Oh, gee, my snooping skills are weak on this one. I'm mixing everything up here.
Yeah, that's all right.
So what was it like to work for a winery that really does have that history, though? Like,
it was amazing. I used to love just walking around that place. I mean, because the Mondavi Winery in Oakville is from 1966. It goes way back. So there's a lot of history there. But the winery that they had for Woodbridge, the winery in Lodi, was opened in 1938.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just walk around when I had free time. I would walk around and look at the big old concrete tanks. So the redwood cellar, they had a building full of redwood tanks that had been put in 1938. Now, I'm lucky enough to have a really good relationship with the current winemaking staff and so forth. So when they took those tanks out 5 or 6 years ago, well, I was in there a couple of years ago, and I said, hey, what are you doing with that wood? So I have a bunch of that redwood from those tanks.
Oh, my God.
My bar in the tasting room I built with a combination of that redwood and oak from a Radu tank. So I worked for Radu, but I made the top from a Radu tank that was put in at Sterling, and then eventually moved to Lodi probably in mid-70s, 45 years ago, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Really cool. I love that. I love that stuff, and I'm in my free time I make furniture. In all my free time I make furniture. So yeah. Well, I was raised by a woodshop teacher. It's
I have to tell you, one of my favorite teachers in high school, middle school and high school really, was the woodshop teacher. And he was actually kind of a lunatic, but in a great way. He was a hockey player, and if you weren't paying, he always had his hockey stick with him, during class or whatever. Yeah. And if you weren't paying attention, this would never fly anymore. But like he would shoot the puck, and it would he would slap shot the puck, and it would go right past your head. I mean, he was spot on with that shot, And I mean, we all loved him, and just the quirkiness or whatever. But that was really one of my favorite classes ever was that. And you learn really good life skills. You can do that stuff whenever. And I don't think that you ever really forget it because you're doing it so much with your hands. Right. So, but that I loved that class, man. That was fantastic.
Yeah, it was always my favorite too. And of course, I didn't just do it in class, but I would do it at home. And I would, when I had days off school and I could go into Dad's high school, I would go with him. I mean, this is when I was 10, 11, 12 years old. So I really enjoyed it, and it stuck. So
that's cool. That is cool. So while you were at Mondavi, you were special research vineyards.
Well, I say I was the default research winemaker because just prior to me starting, the research winemaker got promoted to red wine winemaker at Oakville. And this is a guy that I knew, a guy I went to school with, Richard Sawalski, and we're still friends. So Richard had gotten promoted, and I was just graduated, and I was starting out as the intern, but I wound up being the research winemaker for that 9 months because I didn't have a boss other than the director of winemaking, which was fine. It was a great experience in that I made 84 different wines. I did it all in 100 and 200 pound batches, so I had all these trash cans that I was fermenting in and had to press it all off and keep it all. And then I had to present the information because it was mostly vineyard trials. And so I had to collect all the data and then write it up and then present it to the growers at grower meetings. And it was a really good experience.
I'll say that's an excellent experience, but also like your jam. That's all science right there.
Yeah.
It's really.
Yeah, I was really into it. At the time, I was really into it. I can't say that I'm that into collecting data now.
No. It kind of graduates from collecting data to like the palate experience.
Right.
Walking through the vineyard, noticing what the fruit's doing, looking at the fruit, looking at the vines, tasting. That's really where, you just kind of send it off to the lab for, to confirm your analysis, basically.
Right.
Okay. Now, I'm a little leery to ask this because my research hasn't been so great, but
no worries.
So Acheson is actually a custom crush facility, right? No. See,
we aren't a custom crush facility. We are at a custom crush facility.
Oh, okay.
That was the idea behind doing this, and I had a winery in the Sierra Foothills, and I had that for 6 years. And when the economic crap hit the fan 10 years ago, I had to close it. And I also decided at that point, well, I want to make a living, at least for the foreseeable future, with a laptop and a phone. So I went into consulting and sales and that kind of stuff. And when we started this, we didn't want a winery. We didn't want to have vineyards. We really didn't want any employees. we wound up with a couple now, but I got to have somebody to staff the tasting room. So, no, it's so easy to get an AP license.
Right.
Have it hanging. We actually have it hanging in Top It Off bottling in Napa because we were just bottling originally. We were making wine and getting it from Lodi mostly and then bottling. But, yeah, I mean, we don't have to own anything. And sure, I have to have a couple employees now, but I don't want all that extra overhead.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, we're an AP also because there's no way we can afford or want to buy all of that equipment and deal with all of that. I mean, just alone to bring in the tractor trailer for a bottling, would bankrupt us,
Right.
So we're an AP also, and it's, other than the finite scheduling of bottling, everything is what you want it to be.
Right.
We have bottling is like, oh, you got to bottle this week or you got to bottle this week, and
Right.
But that's very livable. That's very livable, and we're the same way. We don't own our own vineyards. We source.
Yeah.
I don't ever want to be a farmer.
No. It's a gamble. We're already in the wine business. That's enough of a gamble. We don't need to be farmers too.
No.
Because that just adds a whole nother layer of, holy crap, this is going totally wrong.
Right. All right, so I have a question that might throw you for a loop. I'll pre-warn you.
Go ahead.
But then again, nothing else has been right, so we'll go with this. So while I was researching your background, I noticed, and you actually did mention it, that you are working with wines for production of Adam Carolla and the wrapper E40.
Yes.
All right. So do you know where I'm going with this question?
No, I don't. But I don't work for Adam anymore.
Right. That was in your past, right?
Yeah. But I still work for Earl.
Okay.
We're getting ready. We're going to bottle Moscato for him next week.
All right. So here's my question.
Yes.
So about 2 weeks ago, I had done, or maybe 3 weeks ago, I did a podcast and a blog post about the doll murder.
Oh, yeah.
and E40 and Adam Carolla are kind of entwined into that. So I was
They were at California Shiners because of me.
Oh.
So I had started working there in February of 2012, and I started soliciting Adam Carolla in May of 2012.
Okay.
Because he came up with this idea of Mangria, and I said, and I sent an email. I just sent an email to his manager. I said, hey, I can make that for you. And, of course, we emailed back and forth, and he said, okay, send me samples. So I made up samples of what I thought Mangria should taste like, and using, production winemaking methods. It's just a formula beverage. It's just flavored wine, basically.
Okay.
And I sent that to him, and they said, yeah, we like this. Well, let's make it. So we started making it. Little did I know that my boss, Robert Dahl, was not going to pay anybody. He was basically stealing money from Adam and from anybody else that he was working with. He wasn't paying them. They realized that and sued him. They wound up actually becoming whole. They got their money out in product.
Right.
But unfortunately, Earl did not. Earl lost. I mean, he put money into it and he got a little bit back out, but he was not paid the commission on the sales that we had, and it was the tune of about 30,000 cases.
Wow.
So it was a chunk of change, but he looked at it and said it was a really expensive education. And he had a really positive outlook on it because what's he going to do? He can't go back. He didn't think he could collect from Robert, and he was right. And that was before things really took a bad turn,
to say the least.
And I knew all those people, and I was interviewed on 48 Hours for their program on it, and
right.
I just did another podcast. It's called The Housewives of True Crime.
Okay.
And it's these two women in L.A. who do a true crime podcast, and they happen to be friends with a friend of mine who also knew Dahl, and so Tyson calls me up and says, hey, can you do this podcast with me? They want to talk about Robert. Sure, why not? So, yeah, it was interesting,
shocking?
to say the least. Well, shocking, yes, but not. I mean, honestly, anybody who got to know Robert knew that he was extraordinarily volatile and capable of things well beyond the norm. So he was, I mean, calling him sociopathic and psychopathic at this point is well, it's obvious. But even back then, if you spent some time around him, you could tell he could be very charming when he wanted to be, when he was trying to get something from somebody, when he was trying to sell something. But he could turn on a dime. And I made this joke on that podcast that I actually learned and became very good at the ability to remain completely calm while somebody stood in front of me and screamed obscenities at me.
Oh, wow.
Because that's the kind of guy he was. He would blow up. And you know, you can match that, or you can stand back and say, well, you're really wasting a lot of energy doing that, aren't you?
Right.
Because it doesn't matter to me whether you do it or not.
Right.
So, yeah. But I worked for him for 2.5 years.
Well, I was like, when I was doing this, I was like, oh my God, it's like my podcast blog worlds like came, like it's the first time ever that there was two different things that came together that I wasn't purposely bringing together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of crossover.
Right. Wow. I mean, so that's kind of something you remember for your rest of your life, like.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, it's unfortunate. I tried to, and I mean, I knew Imad. I knew the guy that he murdered. I knew him pretty well. And just about 2 weeks before that happened, I was talking to him on the phone, and he was trying to tell me how, Robert was negotiating in good faith and that he wanted to settle this. And I tried to say, you know, Imad, no, he's not capable. He's not capable of negotiating in good faith. That is not what he does. And the other thing I said was, you should never go there. You should never go. You should never be alone in the room with him. You should never go to that winery without a sheriff in tow. Period. His lawyer that morning told him the same thing. And he went anyway.
Because he had good faith.
Well, he did, and he was a nice guy, and he wanted to believe, but more importantly, he wanted his money back, and he thought that he was going to be able to get it.
Wow.
But Robert had no intention. Robert planned on killing him the whole time.
Wow. And then they found all of that other ammunition, so he definitely was planning something.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, there were there was talk of a list that Robert, I don't think he did actually have a list. He didn't need to keep a list of the people that had wronged him. And there are several of us who speculate whether or not we were on the list, but I'm certain I know who all was.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep.
That is eerie. But I'm sorry.
That's okay.
We're gonna go back. We're gonna go back to Acheson, but that like the worlds kind of collided, and I was like, oh my gosh. But let's go back to your winery, and what really caught my eye is your sustainability.
Yeah.
Your sustainability system, and that's what, when you were on the chat, Whining Hour chat, that's really what I honed in on. Why so important to you, and you know, how did this all come together?
The way that it all came together, it was a combination of things. You can tell me how much you enjoy bottling. Let's start with that. Do you know any wineries, any winemakers who say, God, my favorite part of this job is bottling?
Okay.
No, none. We all hate it. Things always go wrong, and I don't want to do that. Now, there was that. That's a small part of it. The other bigger part is, you know, Brian and I both have kids, and we're looking at this world and what the future might look like, and we wanted to be more environmentally responsible. And of course, we talked about doing cans. We talked about still bottling a little bit of wine. But when it came down to it, none of it made any sense. The only thing that made sense was just selling in refillable bottles. And all of our wines only being sold in refillable bottles. And that way, there's control. The bottles don't get thrown away. The bottles just get reused.
Yes.
I mean, wine bottles don't get recycled. They don't get reused for sure. I mean, Encore tried to do that for a while, but they had to charge $3 more per case for the bottles. And
right.
Who's going to do that? Right? We can't. We're in the wine business. We can't afford to pay $3 more a case. So the bottles either get put into a landfill, regardless of putting them in that green bin and all that, or if they do get recycled, in which case they have to be sorted by hand, by color, and then crushed into small bits, and then put back in with some sand, and melted again, the same amount of energy used to make a bottle again as it was in the first place. Where's the savings? There's no savings in your carbon footprint if you're recycling glass. You're just using the same amount of energy to do it all over again, to some extent more energy, because human energy to sort, right. Machine energy to crush this glass, whereas you can shovel the sand out of the ground and throw it in a bin and melt it. So we wanted to get out of that loop and focus on selling wine to customers, not focused on packaging, not, we have to have the really fancy heavy taper bottle that has the $2 cork in it, and it has the big tin capsule, and it has all these things. We want, and there's nothing against that. Obviously, there's still a huge market for that, and lots of people want to save wine for years. Our wine is not that wine. We're the wine that you want to drink on a Tuesday because it's the bottle open in the fridge.
No, so when somebody comes in for their very first time,
yes,
they're going to buy a bottle?
Yeah, so they come in for their first time. They're going to pay for the tasting. We have to charge for tastings because I don't want an endless stream of homeless people in my door. Sorry. Hey, look, nothing against them, but they're not going to buy. So we charge for the tasting. We charge $15. You taste through all the wines that we have, but that gets you your first bottle.
Okay.
So the bottle comes with the first tasting, and then at the end of the tasting, you say, well, gee, I want to fill it up with Cabernet, or I want to fill it up with Chardonnay, or Rosé, whatever it might be. And then presumably you're going to take it home and drink it, and you're going to bring it back. And we probably, a quarter to a third of our business every month is just those returns.
Okay, so now I've been to your winery, I paid my $15, mm-hmm. and I've purchased the wine in a bottle. Yes. Now I'm coming back for my second time.
Yeah.
Am I giving you that bottle and you are replacing it with a nitrogen flushed, sterilized bottle? Or is that your customer's responsibility?
If you've cleaned it and are satisfied with how well it's cleaned, then we just fill it up and that's it. Or we just trade it out. We have the sanitizer there in the shop. So, I mean, I don't have a sparger yet. I wanted to do a nitrogen sparger, but I wanted liquid, and that was expensive.
Oh, okay. I would think so.
Yeah, but I'll probably set up just a little hand sparger on a CO2 container, because you're not going to dissolve enough of it into the wine that it's going to matter. But CO2 is cheaper, and it's denser, and it's easier to work with. But yeah, I mean, basically you come in, you trade your bottle out.
Okay. And then you have what wines are you producing now?
Currently we have Sauvignon Blanc, okay. Chardonnay, a dry rosé of Grenache, Mourvedre, Cinsault, and Syrah.
Okay.
And then a fun red blend we call Moped Red, and that's 80% Cabernet Sauvignon and 20% Petite Syrah. But it was all tank fermented and tank aged, and it's 2018 is that. I mean, it's a 2018 vintage, so it's really soft and young and fruity and fun, and the second most popular wine in the store. Then we have a Zinfandel, and we have Cabernet, and everything but the Chardonnay comes from Lodi.
Okay.
So all of it's really good, reasonable priced, and the Chardonnay we just happened to get get a deal on because we have a friend in Sonoma and they had some Sonoma Coast that was extra.
There you go. Good to have friends.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So yeah. So, but you know, we try to have fun with it and try to do stuff that is not common. And among those, the most outlier that we have is our Cabernet. So the Overlord Cabernet Sauvignon.
Love that name.
Came because I had this idea, selling barrels and barrel alternatives, you know, selling staves and chips and all that stuff. I thought, well, what if you ferment, and this is going to get technical and people might tune out at this point, but what if you ferment flash détente juice in brand new barrels? But what if you take those barrels and put staves inside them as well? So I got 2 brand new barrels, and then I put the equivalent of 2 more barrels in each one in French oak. So I had American oak barrels, and I put 2 more French oak barrels worth of staves inside.
Okay.
And then took flash détente Cabernet Sauvignon juice and fermented it in those barrels.
Okay.
So 300% new oak, and flash détente juice, which has, you know, it's a little more intense color, and it doesn't have the seed tan, and it's got all the phenolics you can get out of the skins. And it was completely undrinkable by itself.
Okay.
But it's what it is it's this combination of super intense, you know, sort of mouth-filling character, coupled with the additional 5 barrels that I blended into those 2 that were tank fermented, tank aged.
Okay.
So really, really fresh fruit, coupled with this really intense mouth-filling oak character, and it's a monster of a wine, you know. And it's originally when I started making it, we hadn't even started working on this concept yet, and I thought, well, what I want is to bottle it, and then we were going to bottle it, and it was going to retail for like $35 a bottle.
Okay.
Well, I didn't bottle it. I didn't have to spend all that money on packaging, and I'm not trying to sell it in wholesale, so I'm selling it for $24 a liter, which is a crazy deal, but it's still, given what we have invested in it, because, you know, we have the oak and all that stuff, but even given what we have invested in it, it's still a very nicely profitable wine.
So what's your percentage? Here goes the geekdom. What's your percentage of that 300% new oak?
It only winds up at 85% new oak.
Okay.
So it's not quite like putting it in all new barrels.
Okay.
But I mean, even then, it's still pretty oaky. It's just
85% is yeah.
It's still heavy, but because it was fermented on the oak, it's better integrated.
Right.
It's not like I put chips in, you know, 300% chips in two weeks before we're going to bottle it, because that would be horrible.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's really well integrated oak, and it doesn't come off as 80%. I mean, I've had wines that somebody said, well, this is only 40% new oak, and I thought, really, is that all?
Right.
So no, but it's you know, it started out as an experiment that I wound up selling to other customers. So I have other customers now that buy new barrels and get inserts put in them. And the idea too of ratcheting up, so not just one insert worth, but 2. And you're minimizing your exposure when it comes to you know, the risks of barrel aging, oxidation, infection, leakage, and all these things that you can get with barrel aging, plus the labor of dealing with barrels. But you're reducing that exposure to a smaller number of barrels, because holding stuff in tank is easier to manage. It's only one SO2 number as opposed to all those barrels. And you still get the same character. You still get the same quality out of it as you would if you were doing it all in barrels.
So that I have honestly, I've never heard of putting in staves in a new barrel. It's normally somebody is saving money and buying a neutral oak barrel and then they're putting the staves in to act like it's semi-new.
Yeah, and that's because, as far as I know, no one had ever done it before I did.
And it's just like, did you wake up in the middle of the night one day, let me think about this, 300% barrel?
You know, most of the time, because I have a couple things, I have a lot of things, not a lot, I have several things that we're doing that no one's ever done before. And not the tasting room. The tasting room is something that people have done for centuries. This is how wine was sold for centuries before we had bottling lines. But the sample system that we use at Radu, this method of fermenting with the barrels, a couple other projects that I'm working on with regard to barrels and aging and barrel alternatives. But most of the time, these ideas come as a result of someone asking me a question, which often is, hey, I'm looking for this character, I'm looking for this oak character, I'm looking for this type of flavor in my wine. How can I get it? And that's exactly what happened. I had a consultant who said, I want more mid-palate. I want more weight. I want that concentrated. I want that to be more intense. And I said, well, have you thought about fermenting? Because he did a lot of flash juice. I said, have you thought about fermenting in new barrels? Yeah, we tried that. I said, well, okay. Have you thought about fermenting in new barrels with inserts in them? And of course the answer was no, we never thought of that. Because I look at it like this, is you have the barrel character, which you know is that round softness, that's that smoothness, it's that mouthfeel that you get once the wine penetrates past the toast. But you have the control of adding these other layers of oak to the wine that help to fill it out even more. And we've graduated to doing, it's between 150 and 200% using a 17 millimeter stave, which just intensifies that mid palate even more. So the 18 that I did 4 barrels, and I did half of them with the 17 millimeter staves and half of them with the 7 millimeter staves. And then I switched entirely to the 17 millimeter staves for 19. Yeah. So I'm just working my way up to, I want to have a wine that is pleasant and balanced and has grapefruit, but also is chewy. You know, it literally is something that you can, it feels like you put something solid in your mouth as opposed to something liquid.
Well, I would think that would do it. I would
you know,
I would think that would do it.
Pretty close.
So you have me very curious. It's like I need to get to Sacramento and try this, because
yes, you do.
That is by far very unique. The whole concept is unique. Going to how you set up your winery, you know, the adage, it plays into a lot of other stuff, but, you know, how do you make $1 million in the wine industry? Start with like 3, blah, 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 you know. Is your setup less expensive than, I mean, I know you don't, well, we don't have a bottling line, but you do the truck, but the bottles have to be you know, like we're constantly, every vintage, every wine, we're buying new bottles.
Right.
Your wine is all going into the same bottles, right? Yeah. You're only buying one SKU.
Right. It's an expensive bottle, but I never look at it as, it's not part of the wine. It's not part of the wine sale because it's sold separately. Because that bottle is just another inventory item that they're buying. It's like a placemat or a t-shirt or something they're buying when they're in the tasting room. It just happens that you put wine in it. So no, it's because it is not part of the cost of goods. It is simply another item that's sold with a margin. It has a very small margin because bottles are expensive, and we don't sell them for much because I don't want them to be expensive. But it's just another item with a margin. And yeah, I mean, I won't. It's early. We've been doing this 2 months, and things are going very well, and they're going the right direction. But I don't predict we'll be in the black for probably another 4 to 6 months.
Well, that's actually really good.
It is really good. No, it's really good by design. You know, winery. I mean, geez, I had a winery for 6 years, and I think I was in the black once.
Right. That's what I'm like. If you're gonna be in the black within your first year, like.
No, we planned it that way because I don't want. It's just not a normal wine business. It's just not like a standard wine business. It's not like It's not a vineyard. It's not like a winery. It's not like. It's very different.
And are your bottles, I should say, like the olive oil bottles, the ones that the cap comes in and then it top.
Yeah, it's a flip top. Yeah, it's the same one used for beer, for growlers, for whatnot.
Okay.
It's actually, I mean, it's a really nice bottle. We didn't go cheap on the bottle. It's the Italian. It's a Bormioli Rocco Giara is what it's called. Giara. They're really popular because they look so pretty. Restaurants use them to pour water a lot of times.
Right.
Table service water. And it'll hold 6 atmospheres. It'll hold sparkling wine levels of bubbles, pressure.
Is that in the future?
Yeah, I think so. We have to figure out how to make it happen without losing too much CO2 on the fill.
Oh.
And what I would probably have to do would be set up the kegs for the sparkling on a counter pressure filler.
Okay.
So just like you fill beer bottles or whatnot, you've got something with pushing back pressure against the keg while it's being filled, and then the same thing with the bottles. You can do a counter pressure filler, and that would be the way to do it.
All right. And then
otherwise, we'll lose too much CO2 on the fill.
Right. And then would you be doing it like the Prosecco method, like?
Yeah. There's no.
I'm like, I can't figure a way to do it.
The only way to do it would also require a large amount of sediment that would wind up being transferred to the bottles. Because we could keg condition the wines just like you do beers, get keg conditioned, bottle conditioned, but you wind up with yeast in the keg, which, the dip tube goes to about 1/8 of an inch above the bottom of the keg, and you're going to suck up a ton of yeast.
Oh, cool.
We'd have to do it. You'd have to do it Charmat.
All right. Okay. We already asked that. We asked what wines. Okay, of the wines you produce, do you have a favorite?
Oh, absolutely.
Favorite style?
Oh,
Overlord?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's far and away my favorite. I like all the wines. It's just if I drink anything white and or cold, most of the time it's going to be rosé.
Okay.
That's just I drink I drink the rosé, but if you look at the numbers of what I bought, because I employee discount, but I buy my own wine. But it's
I don't buy my own wine.
Probably,
I don't buy my own wine.
What's that?
I said I don't buy my own wine.
No, for me it's a thing where we're trying to make the tasting room profitable, and it'd be really easy to drink the profit.
Okay, so I'm going to say in your tasting room, it's a lot easier to just
Oh yeah. Oh boy.
Where me, I'm actually physically pulling a bottle,
right.
and I'm very much thinking about.
Right. But it's just, and the other thing too is it's not just Brian is in New York, so he can't just come in and fill up his bottle.
He can't sample.
I feel like if I'm going to come in and fill up a bottle, I feel like I should pay for it.
Okay. Do you give yourself industry discount?
Of course. Well, employee discount.
Employee discount.
So, much better than industry. No, so I probably have had 95% of the wines that I've had have been the Overlord. The occasional bottle is Zinfandel, and then Rosé.
That's cool. And how long can these bottles? Not that you probably have to worry about it, but if somebody comes in and fills, I'm sure they're drinking it long before.
Yeah,
anything.
They'll last a couple of weeks really easily. Any of the wines will last a couple of weeks on the counter. Put them in the fridge, and it's a couple of weeks longer, maybe even a couple of months, depending on the wine. And then I always recommend that they always keep them in the fridge. And even if it's red wine, and this is sacrilege, I know, but I say, well, take it out if you want to have a glass. Pour your glass, put it in the microwave for about 12 seconds, brings it up to room temperature, and there you go.
Okay, that's a new one to me. I've never heard that.
No, I learned that from a lab guy at Woodbridge 21 years ago, and I've been doing it ever since, and it's true. It doesn't hurt the wine at all. It just brings it right up to room temperature. I've gotten into arguments online over that. I had one guy ask me what the hell I was talking about because that was unbelievable. He worked in a commercial kitchen. They would never put food in a microwave, and I said, dude, 12 seconds. I'm not talking about cooking your chicken in a microwave.
It doesn't even get up to full power.
No. You're just increasing the temperature. So, yeah, I mean, or you could bring the red out and let it come up to room temperature and then drink it. Still not a big deal. It's just to slow down that oxidation process.
Well, you see the guy who puts the wine in the blender to...
Yeah.
You know.
Hey, with that Overlord, that would work really well.
There you go. I'm seeing a marketing image right there. Blender, Overlord, picture of an Overlord, pulling down out of the blender, and I'm seeing it all. I'm seeing it all for you.
Yep, for sure.
Okay. The other thing that I absolutely love is that you deliver.
Yeah.
On bike.
Yep.
On bike. So you have to be pretty darn close to the tasting room.
Yeah. I mean, most of our businesses come within a mile or two of the shop. Okay. So yeah, delivery's easy, and really we're more focused on the apartment buildings that are, the one that we're in. So there's the luxury apartments above us. They're captive audience, and then another block over there's
real estate there.
There's a big unit. We get a lot of customers from that, and then there's new stuff going in that area. So yeah, that's our focus. We'll add to that. I mean, we had planned on getting a little transit, Ford Transit van, and using that to do deliveries, and we still will, but we have to get to that point when it makes sense. Right now,
you do an electric scooter.
Yeah, looked at that too, and oddly enough, to get one that can carry a little bit of wine, like an electric bike.
Yeah, right.
It's not cheap. I mean, you wind up weighing if I get this, it's going to cost me, God, what was that thing? I don't know. The cheapest electric bike with a cargo box on it was like $9,000.
Oh my gosh! Oh, I've never looked at the price of them. That's a lot of deliveries for your ROI.
Right, and then you just say, well, gee, if I have a van, then I can get out farther, I can deliver more, and I can carry more, and I can do all this stuff. So what the hell?
Right.
So yeah.
Get an old VW Bug.
Yeah, and I thought about that, and I have a buddy with an old milk truck.
That's perfect.
Yeah, it's a 1970 Divco that is a milk truck. The milk delivery. The problem is and it runs great, and it's all refurbished and whatnot, but then you have to weigh that thing where it's the environmental impact of this 1970 boat anchor. Right. Or should we get something that's modern and fuel efficient and
sticking to your
got to stick with the philosophy, because otherwise what was it? We had one of those conversations. One of us had this idea. I can't remember. It wasn't me that had the idea. It might have been Brian. It might have been Dan, our tasting manager. But I don't even remember what it was. But somebody said, "Well, why don't we do this?" And that's the opposite of
what we started at.
Of the philosophy. We really can't do that. I can't remember what it was. I just remember having that reaction.
Yeah, you can't be driving down the road making deliveries in a Hummer.
No.
Anyway, is there anything else that I've missed that you want to talk about, Acheson? about your game plan, we want to know how people can find you, how people can, get your wine.
Right. So the easiest way, obviously, they have to come in. We can't ship. I can't ship over state lines. I can't do any of that kind of stuff. I can deliver, but, again, relatively local. No, the address, 1629 19th Street, and it's Acheson Wine Company. We're open. This is my little joke. We're open from noon to 7-ish.
Okay.
It literally says 7-ish on the door.
I love it.
And then Friday and Saturday is till 8-ish.
8-ish.
Which often winds up being 9:30. And we're open 7 days. We're open Sunday too. So that's the gist of it.
Can people come in by the glass?
Yeah.
Is it like a lounge area?
Well, we have a bench seat that I built. Nice leather seat with a little shelf on the back to put your wine glass. I'm working on some tables that'll slide in. It's a relatively small space, and I didn't want to clog it up with tables and chairs and stuff. We want to be able to have people come in and stand at the bar and taste, and then get their wine and go on about the day. But yeah, we sell by the glass. We actually sell by the keg too. We've had a couple customers say, "Oh, I think I'd like to have a keg of that at home." All right.
Okay.
Done.
All right.
No problem.
Get one of those beer refrigerators and plug it, put it right on in there.
Yep, nothing to it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And what about social media? Where are you at?
Obviously Facebook and Instagram are the two big ones, and it's just Acheson Wine Company for both. Twitter, we do some stuff, but it's Acheson Wine Co. because the name has to be shorter. But my tasting manager is my social media manager as well, and Dan is relentless. He's we call him the Dan Show.
The Dan Show?
The Dan Show.
Oh, Dan Show. Okay.
Yeah, because he is very entertaining. While I've been in production and Brian's been in sales, Dan has been in hospitality. So he's worked in tasting rooms all over Napa for the past 16, 17 years. And he just likes doing that. He likes putting on a show. And so he runs the store and does all the social media stuff, and it's awesome.
And is he also is he from Sacramento?
No, well, he grew up in Fairfield, but he moved to Sacramento, and we all worked at Enotria, this restaurant in Sacramento. That's where we all met.
Oh.
So we've been friends that long, 23 years now.
Wow.
And so we just have our little gang.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I have to say congratulations on it, because I think that it's a fantastic concept, fantastic idea, and giving back to Mother Nature and Earth is always good, and I believe in trying to leave this place a better place than what it was when I came to it.
For sure.
Carry in, carry out type concept,
yeah.
And that is truly worthwhile, and that's really why I wanted to share your story.
Thank you.
So, are you ready to play a little game?
Sure.
All right. So, I always end these episodes with a game of opposites.
Okay.
And so basically there is no right or wrong answer. I'm just going to give you two words that are opposites of each other, or at least in my brain they're opposites of each other. And you just answer whichever one you think is resonates with you more.
Sure.
Okay? So now I'm curious, because I have in my brain which way you're going to go, but I haven't been so good today on other things, so we'll see. All right, so we're going to start off with non-wine related terms, and then I'll get us into wine terms, okay?
Okay.
All right, so here we go. Night or day?
Day.
Sunset or sunrise?
Sunset.
Black or white?
Black.
Walk or run?
Walk.
Food or drink?
Oh, that's a tough one. Food.
Old world, new world?
Old world.
Sweet or dry?
Dry.
Bubbles or still?
Still.
Oak or stainless?
Oak.
Super oak. Drink now or drink later?
Drink now.
Blend or varietal?
Blend.
Vintage or non-vintage?
Vintage.
Cork or screw cap?
Neither.
Or what do you call
Screw cap if I have to, but flip top.
Flip top. Okay. I was like, what would we actually call that?
Yeah.
Napa or Sonoma?
Napa.
Commercial or indigenous?
Commercial.
Bordeaux or Rhone?
Rhone.
And warm climate or cool climate?
Ooh, I'm probably more of a warm climate guy.
Okay.
Yeah. I like cool climate stuff, but I find that just generally the wines that I'm drawn to are more warm climate. You know, I want more fruit, bigger,
right,
more intense. Yeah. I like them all. I can't deny it. I'll drink.
That's how I am. I'll drink cool climate. I have absolutely nothing against cool climate, but I'm drawn. You know, well, it is Paso.
Right.
Warm climate. So I thought you would go indigenous.
Nope.
I thought you would go indigenous. You know.
Oh, come on now. You know there's no such thing.
Well, yes, but the concept. No,
I appreciate it, but when I say I'm obsessed with the science of it, there's the thing that goes along with it is control. I control everything that I can control, which, I mean, we have enough variables that were out of our control as winemakers that I want to make sure I manage everything that I can. And, you know, this whole natural wine movement, it's just marketing. There's no legal definition of natural wine, and I can say, well, I make all natural wine, and to a large extent, it's grapes. That's a natural product. It's 99.99% natural, everything that's in it. But when it comes down to it, it just, to me, it's natural winemaking is more about what you're telling the customer than what you're doing with your wine.
Right.
And people like it because they think, oh, well, it's natural. Yeah, well, I'm going to tell you there's 3 flaws in this wine. I'm going to tell you what's wrong with it. I'm going to tell you there's too high VA, the ethyl acetate's off the chart, and that you've got Brett going wild in it, and those are flaws. That's a failure. That's, to me, that's a failure in winemaking, and it's not. In saying, well, no, this is how I made it. No, it's not.
Right.
It's how you didn't make it. That's what you got.
Right.
So no, I'm not at all in that camp. Even though I've got a friend who does it, and he's happy and sells his wine. So what can I say?
Well, we do commercial because we're too small.
Yeah.
I can't afford to go off the rails. I can't. But I must admit that when we get bigger and where we are hopefully on 100% in the wine, I'm no longer doing my 50,000 other things.
Right.
I would like to experiment with it, you know, do a little small lot with it. We'll play with it where if it does go off the rails, it goes off the rails. Yeah. But right now, if my wine goes off the rails,
you lose.
I don't have a winery anymore.
Right. Lose big.
Right. Yep. Anyway, well, thank you very much for joining me. It was really a very interesting story and great meeting you in virtual real life. And I do hope to get up to see you. I mean, it's not that far of a drive from Fresno.
No, it's not bad. Well, and certainly if you come up for Unified,
right,
that'd be a good time.
Right, and there's heading further north. There's always the turnoff to go do it. And Mike has never actually been to Lodi, and I keep trying to get him to let's go there and show it because I think there's some exceptional wineries there.
There really are. Yeah,
and I love that they are holding themselves accountable for things that because they want to hold themselves accountable for it. And I do get him to drink. He enjoys the wine from Lodi. He just doesn't really want to go that route. I don't know. One day. But thank you very much. Have a fantastic evening. It's for a little after 4 for you. I'm in Jersey, so I am going to go enjoy some wine at the moment.
Excellent.
But have a great night, and it was a pleasure talking to you.
Nice talking to you, Lori. Thanks.
All right, bye.
Bye.